Good evening. Tonight's story is called The Story of Prince Ivan and the Grey Wolf from traditional Russian mythology. So snuggle up under the blankets and prepare for a wonderful night of sleep. And once you're all settled in, close your eyes. When I was 23, I found myself lost in a dense forest outside Moscow, where the mist hung so thick between the ancient pines that my breath seemed to catch on it. That night, sheltering in a small wooden cabin, an elderly man with eyes as gray as winter told me the tale of Prince Ivan and his faithful Grey Wolf, a story that would follow me like a shadow through the years that followed. The old man's voice was soft like falling snow as he stoked the fire, each ember rising toward the darkened ceiling beams as if reaching for stars. This tale, he said, leaning forward until the firelight carved deep shadows into the valleys of his face, is about loyalty in a world that has forgotten its meaning. If stories are maps to guide us home, then this one has been my North Star. I stayed in that cabin for 3 nights, snowbound and grateful for the warmth. The old man, Nikolai was his name, seemed pleased to have a visitor to share his stories with. On the second night, as we sipped strong black tea sweetened with cherry preserves, he continued the tale that had so captivated me. Tsar Vislov Andronovich, he began, his weathered hands cupping the steaming glass, had an orchard unlike any other in all of Russia. The pride of this orchard was a special apple tree whose fruit shone like polished gold in the sunlight. Each apple was said to contain the warmth of 100 summers. The orchard was his greatest joy and deepest pride. But one morning, walking among his treasures, the Tsar discovered something amiss. An apple was missing. The next day, another disappeared. Guards were posted, but none could catch the thief. But Tsar had 3 sons. Nikolai continued, his voice dropping lower, compelling me to lean in. Dmitri, the eldest, strong and serious. Vasily, the middle son, clever and calculating. And Ivan, the youngest, kind-hearted and perhaps too trusting for his own good. The Tsar, desperate to catch the thief, asked his sons to take turns guarding the orchard at night. The reward would be substantial, half the kingdom and the promise of the throne. After his passing, Dmitri volunteered for the first night. He positioned himself beneath the golden apple tree, sword at his side. But the night was warm, the breeze gentle, and soon his vigilance gave way to slumber. By morning, another apple was gone. Though Dmitri insisted no one had entered the garden, Vasily tried the next night, bringing strong tea to keep himself awake. Yet he too succumbed to sleep beneath the stars, and another golden apple vanished. Like his brother, he claimed to have seen nothing. Then young Ivan asked for his chance. Nikolai said, refilling our tea glasses. His father hesitated. Ivan was his favorite, his youngest, but the boy insisted. Outside the cabin window, snow continued to fall, each flake catching the firelight before disappearing into the darkness. I wrapped my hands around my warm glass, waiting. Unlike his brothers, Ivan did not sit comfortably beneath the tree. He paced, he pinched his skin when drowsiness threatened. And just when the night was at its darkest, something extraordinary happened. The garden suddenly filled with light, as if the moon had descended from the sky. A bird with feathers that shimmered like flames glided into the orchard. It was larger than an eagle, with a crown of golden plumage and eyes that gleamed like crystal. This was the legendary Firebird. Its single feather could illuminate an entire room. Ivan watched, transfixed, as it settled on the golden apple tree. Only when it began to pluck an apple did he spring into action. The boy lunged forward, grasping at the magnificent creature, but he managed to catch only a single tail feather as the bird soared away into the night. The next morning, Ivan presented the glowing feather to his father. The Tsar was astonished. The feather shone with such brilliance that the royal treasury needed no candles when it was present. But, possessing just one feather, Nikolai said, tapping his finger against his glass, only deepened the Tsar's desire for the whole bird. I nodded, understanding. How often do we want more than what we have, even when what we have is already extraordinary? The following morning, Nikolai and I collected firewood together. The snow had stopped, leaving the forest draped in pristine white that crunched beneath our boots. When we returned, our cheeks flushed with cold, he prepared a simple lunch of dark bread and smoked fish before continuing his story. The Tsar's obsession with the firebird grew until he could think of nothing else, Nikolai said, breaking the bread between us. He summoned his 3 sons and declared that whoever could capture the firebird would receive half his kingdom immediately, with the promise of inheriting the remainder upon his death. The older brothers, Dmitri and Vasily, eagerly accepted the challenge. They were given the finest horses and provisions for their journey, setting out together with grand promises of success. Young Ivan also begged to go, but his father was reluctant. "You are too young," he protested, "and the world beyond our kingdom is filled with dangers." But Ivan persisted until the Tsar relented. He was given a horse, not as magnificent as his brother's steeds, but sturdy and reliable, and sent on his way with his father's blessing and warning. The brothers traveled together at first, Nikolai continued, but soon came to a crossroads where a large stone stood. On it was carved a warning that chilled their blood. Whoever takes the left path will know cold and hunger. Whoever takes the right path will live, but his horse will die. Whoever takes the middle path will die, but his horse will live. The brothers argued about which way to go. Finally, they agreed to separate. Dmitri chose the left path, believing he could endure hardship. Vasily took the middle road, reasoning that a horse could always be replaced. Ivan was left with the right path, where he would live but lose his companion. The boy rode slowly, dreading what was to come. Nikolai said, his eyes distant, as if seeing the story unfold before him. He had traveled for only a day when suddenly a massive gray wolf leaped from the forest. True to the stone's prophecy, the wolf killed Ivan's horse with a single bite. The prince was left alone and on foot, devastated by the loss of his faithful companion. For days he walked, his food dwindling, his spirits sinking with each sunset. On the 3rd day, exhausted and hungry, he sat down on a fallen log to rest. That was when he first noticed the gray wolf watching him from the shadow of the trees. Ivan was startled when the wolf approached, and even more surprised when it spoke. "I am sorry, Ivan Zorovich, for killing your horse. I did not know you were on a sacred quest. As penance for my deed, I will serve you as faithfully as your horse would have." Before Ivan could respond, the wolf lowered its massive body to the ground. "Climb onto my back, young prince. I am faster than any horse and know the paths through these lands better than any guide. Tell me where you wish to go." Ivan explained his quest for the firebird. The gray wolf nodded knowingly. "The firebird belongs to Tsar Dolmat, whose kingdom lies 3 times 9 lands away from here. I will take you there, but you must promise to heed my advice when we arrive." Ivan agreed, though not without hesitation. He climbed onto the wolf's broad back, fingers clutching the thick fur. Then they were off, moving with such speed that forests and fields blurred around them. The wolf ran tirelessly, day and night, stopping only briefly for Ivan to rest and eat. "In this way," Nikolai said, pouring us each another cup of tea, "Ivan formed an unlikely alliance with the very creature that had seemed his greatest misfortune. I nodded, thinking of how often our greatest setbacks become unexpected doorways to opportunity. Outside, the afternoon light was fading, casting long blue shadows across the snow. Evening settled around the cabin like a heavy cloak. Nikolai added more logs to the fire, and shadows danced across the rough-hewn walls as he resumed his tale after many days of travel. Ivan and the Grey Wolf arrived at the high stone walls of Tsar Domat's kingdom, he said, his voice taking on a hushed quality that made me lean forward. It was night, and the moon cast everything in silver. The Grey Wolf circled the outer wall until they found a secluded spot. Listen carefully, the wolf told Ivan. Beyond this wall is a garden, and in that garden stands a golden cage hanging from a branch. Inside that cage is the firebird. You must enter alone, take the bird, but leave the cage behind. The cage has bells that will wake the entire palace if touched. Ivan nodded his understanding and climbed the wall with care. Dropping silently into the garden, he found himself surrounded by exotic plants that released sweet perfumes into the night air. Fountains murmured quietly, their waters catching moonlight like scattered diamonds. And there, just as the wolf had described, hung the golden cage. Inside was the firebird, its feathers pulsing with inner light, red and gold and amber, even as it slept with its head beneath its wing. Ivan approached cautiously. The bird was even more magnificent than he remembered. Its plumage radiated warmth that pushed back the cool night air. He opened the cage door slowly and reached inside to grasp the bird. But as he held the creature, a thought occurred to him. How could he present such a magnificent bird to his father without its equally splendid cage? Surely the Tsar would want both. Despite the wolf's warning, Ivan reached for the golden cage. The moment his fingers touched the metal, tiny bells all around the cage began to ring a sound like 1,000 silver needles falling on crystal. Guards rushed into the garden with torches and swords drawn. They seized Ivan and brought him before Tsar Domat, who was roused from his sleep. "Why have you tried to steal my prized firebird?" demanded the angry ruler, still wearing his nightclothes beneath a hastily donned robe. Trembling, Ivan explained his quest, his father's desire for the firebird, and his journey. Something in his honest telling softened the Tsar's expression. "I would have given you the firebird as a gift had you come to me openly," said Tsar Domat. "Now, having caught you as a thief, I should order your execution." Ivan's heart sank. He thought of the Grey Wolf waiting beyond the wall, of his father and brothers, of all the distance he had traveled only to fail. However, the Tsar continued, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "I will spare your life on one condition. 3 times 9 lands from here lives Tsar Ephraim. He possesses a horse with a golden mane that I have long desired. Bring me this horse, and you shall have the firebird in its cage to take to your father." Ivan agreed immediately, grateful for his life and the chance to complete his quest. He was allowed to leave the palace, but without the firebird. Outside, the Grey Wolf was waiting, pacing anxiously. "He did not heed my warning," the wolf said, its yellow eyes reflecting disappointment rather than anger. "I am sorry," Ivan replied, his head bowed in shame. "I thought the cage and bird together would please my father more. Now I have been given another task before I can claim the firebird." The Grey Wolf sighed, a surprisingly human sound from its massive chest. "This is the way of quests, young prince. One task leads to another, and each choice creates new paths to walk. Tell me of this new challenge." Ivan explained about the horse with the golden mane. Without comment, the wolf again lowered itself to the ground, inviting Ivan to climb onto its back. "Despite your mistake, I will continue to help you," said the wolf. "But remember, the most valuable treasures often come with warnings and conditions. Ignoring them rarely leads to good fortune. We often believe we know better than those who came before us," Nikolai said, interrupting his story to stir the embers in the fireplace. "And sometimes our desire for more blinds us to the risks of obtaining it." I nodded, thinking of my own journey through Russia, how often I had ignored warnings from locals about weather or terrain, believing my modern equipment and knowledge superior to their traditional wisdom. Each time I had paid a price for my arrogance. That night, slept deeply, lulled by the warmth of the fire and the quiet breathing of my elderly host in the corner of the cabin. When morning came, Nikolai was already up, preparing a breakfast of kasha topped with dried berries. The windows were frosted in intricate patterns, and sunlight, filtering through them, cast blue-white shapes across the wooden floor. "The gray wolf carried Ivan for many days and nights," Nikolai continued, as if there had been no interruption to his tale. "They crossed mountains so high the stars seemed within reach, and valleys so deep that daylight barely touched them. Finally, they arrived at the kingdom of Tsar Afron. Again, they waited until nightfall before approaching. The wolf brought Ivan to the royal stables, which were guarded by sleeping grooms. Listen carefully," the wolf whispered. "Inside, you will find the horse with the golden mane. His coat shines like the sun, even in darkness. You must take only the horse, not the bridle that hangs beside him. The bridle is studded with precious stones that will ring like bells if moved." Ivan slipped quietly past the sleeping grooms. Inside the stable, he was immediately drawn to a stall from which a golden light emanated. There stood the most magnificent horse he had ever seen. Its coat was the color of molten gold, and its mane flowed like a river of light down its powerful neck. The horse turned intelligent eyes toward Ivan, but made no sound of alarm. Beside the stall hung a bridle, unlike any Ivan had seen before. It was crafted of silver and gold threads woven together, and embedded throughout were diamonds, rubies, and sapphires that caught the light from the horse's coat and multiplied it. Ivan approached the horse slowly, speaking soothing words. The creature allowed him to stroke its neck and seemed willing to follow. Ivan led it toward the stable door, but then hesitated. How could he present such a magnificent horse to Tsar Domat without its equally splendid bridle? Surely both together would guarantee the exchange for the Firebird, despite his promise to the Grey Wolf. Ivan reached for the jeweled bridle. The moment he lifted it from its hook, the precious stones clicked against one another with a sound like crystal raindrops. The grooms awoke instantly and seized Ivan before he could escape. He was brought before Tsar Afron, who was even more fearsome than Tsar Domat had been. His beard was long and black, his eyes like chips of ice. "So," the Tsar thundered, "you thought to steal my greatest treasure?" Once again, Ivan explained his quest, how he sought the Firebird for his father, how he now needed the golden-maned horse to trade for the Firebird, and how he had traveled so far with the help of the Grey Wolf. The Tsar's expression shifted from anger to contemplation. "I have heard tales of this Firebird," he said, "and I understand the desire to possess such wonders. I might have gifted you the horse had you approached me honorably." Ivan's heart sank, expecting another impossible task, or perhaps execution this time. "There is one treasure I desire more than any other," continued the Tsar. "Far from here lives a princess named Elena the Fair. Her beauty is said to rival the sun and moon combined. Bring her to me as my bride, and you shall have the golden-maned horse with its bridle to trade for your Firebird." Ivan agreed to this new quest. though his heart was heavy with the weight of his repeated failures. Outside, the gray wolf awaited him, eyes gleaming knowingly in the darkness. "I can see by your face that you did not heed my warning again," said the wolf, even confessed his disobedience, hanging his head in shame. "I thought the bridle and horse together would please Tsar Domat more. Now I must somehow bring Princess Alina to Tsar Afron before I can claim the horse, before I can claim the firebird, before I can return to my father." The wolf shook its massive head. "Each mistake compounds the journey, young prince. Yet I remain by your side. This princess lives even further from your home, but I know the way." Ivan climbed onto the wolf's back, grateful, yet ashamed of his repeated failures. As they ran beneath the stars, Ivan wondered aloud, "Why do you continue to help me when I have twice ignored your counsel?" The wolf was silent for a long moment, their passage marked only by the soft sound of paws on earth and the rush of wind. "Because," the wolf finally replied, "loyalty is not measured by the wisdom of the one who receives it, but by the steadfastness of the one who gives it." Nikolai paused in his storytelling to sip his tea, his gaze distant. Outside the cabin window, a few snowflakes had begun to fall again, dancing lazy spirals against the bright sky. "Sometimes," the old man said quietly, "we need those who will stand by us, not just when we succeed, but when we fail. Perhaps, especially when we fail." I nodded, thinking of friends who had remained when I had given them every reason to leave, after a simple midday meal of mushroom soup and black bread. Nikolai and I took a brief walk outside. The air was knife-sharp in our lungs, the snow squeaking beneath our boots. Ravens called to each other from the treetops, their voices echoing in the stillness. When we returned to the cabin, our faces tingling with cold, Nikolai resumed his tale by the freshly stoked fire. The gray wolf carried Ivan across mountains and valleys, through dense forests and over wide rivers, he said, his voice taking on a rhythmic quality that mimicked the wolf's running. Days blended into nights, and still they pressed on. Finally, they arrived at a kingdom surrounded by a garden unlike any Ivan had seen before. Its walls were not of stone, but of living trees that had grown together, their branches intertwining to form an impenetrable barrier. Behind this natural fortification bloomed flowers that glowed with their own inner light, casting rainbow hues into the evening air. "This is where Princess Alina walks each twilight," the gray wolf explained. "But this time, I cannot advise you to enter alone. The guards here are numerous and alert. Instead, I will go myself." The wolf instructed Ivan to hide in a nearby grove and wait. "When I return with the princess, be ready to ride. We will need to move swiftly." Ivan concealed himself as directed, his heart beating rapidly with anticipation and fear. He watched as the gray wolves circled the garden, studying its patterns of guards and gates. As twilight deepened into dusk, a new light appeared within the garden, not from the glowing flowers, but from a procession of lanterns. In the center of this moving constellation of lights walked a woman whose beauty was just as the tales had described. Princess Alina's hair flowed like a river of gold down her back, and her face had a luminosity that seemed to come from within. She moved with grace among the flowers, occasionally bending to inhale their fragrance or touch a petal with gentle fingers. The gray wolf waited until she had wandered to a secluded corner of the garden. Then, with a leap that carried it over the living wall, the wolf landed silently behind the princess before the guards could react. The wolf had carefully taken hold of her gown in its teeth and bounded back over the wall. "Princess!" Lana's scream pierced the night as the wolf ran toward Ivan's hiding place. Guards shouted in alarm, and the sound of pursuit filled the air. When the wolf reached Ivan, it paused only long enough for him to climb onto its back. Seated behind the frightened princess, hold her securely, the wolf growled, and hold on to me. This ride will be faster than any before. Ivan wrapped one arm around Alana's waist and clutched the wolf's fur with his other hand. Then they were flying across the landscape, the wolf's paws barely touching the ground. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit gradually faded. The princess's initial terror gave way to a stunned silence as they traveled. When they finally stopped to rest by a stream far from her kingdom, she demanded answers. Who are you who steals me from my home, and what manner of creature carries us both? Her voice was melodious, even in anger, her eyes flashing like summer lightning. Ivan explained his quest, his search for the firebird, the golden-maned horse, and now her. He spoke of his father's longing, his own failures, and the bargains that had brought him to this moment. He did not hide that he intended to bring her to Tsar Afron as a bride. I am merely a token to be exchanged for a horse, which is to be exchanged for a bird, Alana said, her voice cold. And what of my wishes? My kingdom? My life? Ivan had no answer. In his focus on his quest, he had not considered the princess as anything more than the next treasure to be obtained. Now, faced with her dignity and anger, shame washed over him. They made camp for the night, the gray wolf hunting to bring them food. As they sat across the small fire from each other, an uncomfortable silence stretched between Ivan and Alana. I never meant to cause you pain, Ivan finally said. I have been following this path without questioning where it leads or who it harms. A path that involves taking a woman against her will is not a noble one, Alana replied, but her tone had softened slightly. Tell me more of your journey, of this wolf who serves you so faithfully. Through the night, Ivan shared the full tale, his brother's failures in the garden, the firebird's feather, the prophecy at the crossroads, and his repeated failures to heed the wolf's warnings. Alana listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed both intelligence and compassion. By morning, a fragile understanding had formed between them. Alana did not forgive the abduction, but she recognized in Ivan a young man who had become entangled in forces beyond his understanding. I cannot go willingly to be Afron's bride, she told Ivan as they prepared to continue their journey. I have heard tales of his cruelty, and I have my own dreams that do not include being traded for a horse, however magnificent. The longer we travel together, Nikolai said, pausing in his tale, the more their hearts turned toward each other. It was not a love born of convenience or necessity, but something that grew quietly between them, nourished by shared trials and discoveries. Outside the cabin window, twilight was gathering again, turning the snow to deeper blue. I found myself wondering about Nikolai himself. Had he ever loved someone the way Ivan came to love Alana? His weathered face revealed nothing as he gazed into the fire. Momentarily lost in memories I could not share. As night settled fully around the cabin, Nikolai lit an oil lamp that cast a warm yellow glow across the table between us. From a small wooden cabinet, he produced a bottle of amber liquid and 2 small glasses. A little warmth for the coldest part of the story, he said, pouring a finger of the liquor for each of us. It smelled of honey and herbs and burned sweetly down my throat. As Ivan, Alana, and the gray wolf continued their journey, Nikolai resumed. Ivan found himself increasingly troubled. He had come to care deeply for the princess, whose wisdom and kindness revealed themselves more with each passing day. The thought of delivering her to Tsar Afron became unbearable. One evening, as they made camp in a small clearing, Ivan confessed his feelings to the wolf. "I cannot complete this task," he said. "I would rather fail my father than condemn Alina to a life with a man she does not love." The gray wolf studied Ivan with knowing yellow eyes. "Your heart has finally begun to guide you, rather than your ambition," it said. "There may yet be a way to fulfill your quest without sacrificing the princess." The wolf revealed a plan. It would transform itself to take the appearance of Princess Alina. In this disguise, it would allow itself to be presented to Tsar Afron in exchange for the golden-maned horse. Once Ivan and the real princess had escaped with the horse, the wolf would reveal itself and flee. "You would do this for me?" Ivan asked, astonished. "I have accompanied you this far," the wolf replied simply. The next morning, they approached the kingdom of Tsar Afron at the edge of the forest. The gray wolf instructed Ivan and Alina to wait while it walked a short distance away. The wolf circled 3 times, then shook itself vigorously. Before their astonished eyes, its form blurred and shifted until a perfect copy of Princess Alina stood where the wolf had been. "Now," said the wolf Alina, its voice a flawless imitation of the princess's melodious tones, "take me to Tsar Afron." Ivan led the disguised wolf to the palace gates, where they requested an audience with the Tsar. When Afron saw the woman he believed to be Princess Alina, his eyes lit with covetous delight. "You have succeeded where others have failed," he declared to Ivan. "As promised, the golden-maned horse is yours, along with its bridle." Ivan departed with the magnificent horse, riding swiftly back to where the real Alina waited. They wasted no time, both mounting the golden-maned steed and galloping toward the kingdom of Tsar Dolmat, where the firebird awaited. "What will happen to the gray wolf?" Alina asked as they rode. "It will reveal itself and escape once we are safely away," Ivan replied, though a shadow of worry crossed his face. "The wolf has proven far more cunning than any hunter or guard." They reached Tsar Dolmat's kingdom as sunset painted the sky in fierce oranges and reds. True to his word, the Tsar exchanged the firebird and its golden cage for the horse with the golden mane. With the firebird secured, Ivan and Alina set off toward Ivan's homeland, both riding the wolf, which had rejoined them as promised. "We are almost at journey's end," Ivan said as they made camp that final night. "Tomorrow we will reach my father's kingdom." The gray wolf seemed subdued. "This is where our paths must part," it said. "I fulfilled my debt to you for taking your horse. Tomorrow I will leave you at the edge of your father's lands." Ivan's heart was heavy at these words. "You have been more than a mount or a guide to me," he told the wolf. "You have been my wisest counsel and truest friend. Will you not come with us to meet my father?" The wolf shook its massive head. "My place is in the wild forest, not in the courts of men. But I will watch over you from afar, young prince. Of that you can be certain." That night, exhausted from their long journey, Ivan and Alina fell into deep sleep beside the dying embers of their small fire. Neither noticed the 2 figures that approached silently from the surrounding forest. It was Ivan's brothers, Nikolai said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Dmitri and Vasily had failed in their quests and were returning home empty-handed when they stumbled upon their younger brother, sleeping with not only the firebird, but a woman of extraordinary beauty. Jealousy poisoned their hearts. Moving with cruel purpose, the brothers drew their swords. They fell upon Ivan, striking him before he could even wake to defend himself. Then they seized the firebird, its golden cage, and the terrified Princess Alina. "If we bring these treasures to Father," Dmitri said to Vasily, "and tell him we obtained them through great trials, he will give us the rewards promised." "And what of Ivan?" asked Vasily, looking down at their brother's still form. "Let the forest claim him," Dmitri replied coldly. "No one will ever know." Kay forced Elena to swear that she would not reveal their treachery, threatening to return and kill her if she did. Then they rode away toward the Tsar's palace, leaving Ivan's body where it had fallen. The gray wolf, who had been hunting, returned to find this tragic scene. It rushed to Ivan's side, nosing at him gently, but the prince did not stir. Blood darkened the ground beneath him. The wolf threw back its head and howled, a sound of such anguish that birds took flight from distant trees and animals cowered in their dens. Then, with grim determination, it began to search for a way to save the young prince far above the forest. A crow and his two fledglings circled, drawn by the scent of death. The gray wolf saw them and called out, "Crow, do not descend yet. I have a task that may spare your young ones the danger of hunting for many days." Cautiously, the crow landed on a nearby branch. "What task, wolf, and why should I trust you? A predator who could easily make a meal of my children, because I swear on the ancient pact between forest creatures that no harm will come to you or yours if you help me now." The wolf replied, "I need the waters of death and the waters of life. Bring these to me, and I will reward you richly." The crow considered the offer, then agreed. It flew away, returning many hours later with two vials clasped carefully in its claws. One contained water as black as midnight, the other water that sparkled like liquid starlight. First, the gray wolf sprinkled the water of death over Ivan's wounds. The flesh closed seamlessly, leaving no scars. Then it let 3 drops of the water of life fall between the prince's lips. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden gasp, Ivan's chest rose and color returned to his face. "You have been betrayed by your own blood," the wolf told him when he had fully awakened. "Your brothers have taken the Firebird and Princess Elena to your father, claiming the victory as their own." Nikolai paused in his storytelling, taking a small sip from his glass. The lamplight caught in the deep lines of his face, turning them into valleys of shadow. "Betrayal by those we trust cuts deeper than any sword," he said softly. "It leaves wounds that even the water of life struggles to heal." I nodded, thinking of my own experiences with trust broken and loyalties abandoned. Outside, the night had grown utterly still, as if the very forest was holding its breath, waiting for the tale's conclusion. Dawn came with a gentle persistence, light stealing through the cabin's frosted windows in pale gold stripes. Nikolai was already up, tending the fire when I awoke. We shared a breakfast of yesterday's bread, toasted over the flames and spread with honey. The old man seemed to gain energy as he prepared to finish his tale, his movements more spry than they had been the previous evening. Ivan's rage upon learning of his brother's treachery was like a storm. Nikolai continued, settling back into his chair. But the gray wolf counseled patience and cunning rather than blind fury. "They will not expect you to return from death," the wolf said. "This gives us an advantage. I can carry you to your father's palace faster than any horse. We may yet arrive before Elena is forced to marry one of your brothers." Ivan climbed onto the wolf's back, and they raced toward his homeland. The wolf ran as it never had before, its paws barely touching the ground, its breath coming in steady, powerful gusts. They paused neither for food nor rest, driven by the urgency of their mission. As they approached the kingdom, they began to see signs of celebration, ribbons tied to trees, villagers in their finest clothes heading toward the palace. "A wedding day," the wolf growled. "We have arrived just in time." They learned from passing villagers that Prince Dmitri was to marry a foreign princess that very afternoon, a woman of extraordinary beauty who had arrived with him from his quest. The Tsar was beside himself with joy, not only at the marriage, but at the return of the legendary Firebird. Ivan and the wolf slipped into the city unnoticed amid the bustling crowds. They made their way to the palace and found a side entrance used by servants bringing supplies for the feast. Once inside, they concealed themselves behind a massive tapestry near the great hall where the ceremony would take place. Through a gap in the heavy fabric, Ivan could see his father seated on his throne, looking older than when Ivan had left, but beaming with pride. Beside him sat the golden cage with the firebird, its plumage casting dancing lights across the hall. Vasily stood near the throne, puffed up with self-importance. Then the musicians began to play, and the assembled crowd turned toward the entrance. Princess Alina entered, her face a mask of dignified composure, though her eyes were dull with suppressed grief. She wore a wedding gown of silver and blue, but to Ivan, she looked like a prisoner being led to execution. Behind her came Dmitri, strutting like a peacock, nodding to the applauding crowd. Just as the ceremony was about to begin, Ivan stepped out from behind the tapestry. "Father," he called, his voice ringing through the sudden silence. "I have returned." The Tsar's face drained of color, as if he were seeing a ghost. Dmitri and Vasily froze, their expressions shifting from shock to terror. "It cannot be," whispered the Tsar. "My son was lost on his quest." "I was not lost, but betrayed," Ivan replied, approaching the throne. "My own brothers attacked me while I slept and left me for dead in the forest. They stole the firebird that I had obtained through great trials, and they took Princess Alina, who had agreed to be my bride." Elena's face transformed with joy at the sight of Ivan alive. She broke away from Dmitri and ran to Ivan's side, taking his hand in hers. "It is true, Your Majesty," she said. "Your younger son won the firebird through courage and perseverance. He rescued me from my kingdom, and I came with him willingly because I had given him my heart. His brothers threatened my life if I revealed their treachery." Murmurs of outrage rippled through the crowd. The Tsar's face darkened with anger as he turned to his elder sons. "Is this true?" he demanded. Dmitri and Vasily fell to their knees, their denials dying on their lips as a gray wolf padded silently into the hall, its yellow eyes fixed on them with knowing accusation. "This wolf," Ivan said, placing his hand on the great creature's head, "saved my life and helped me complete every task set before me. It can attest to the truth of my words." The Tsar looked deeply into his son's eyes and saw their guilt plainly written there. His disappointment was like a physical weight that bent his shoulders. "You have broken the most sacred bond that between brothers," he said heavily. "You have brought shame upon yourselves and this kingdom." The Tsar ordered Dmitri and Vasily stripped of their royal titles and banished from the kingdom. Then, turning to Ivan and Elena, his expression softened. "My son," he said, "I see now that you have proven yourself worthy, not just through completing your quest, but through the loyalty you have inspired in both this princess and this remarkable wolf. The kingdom shall be yours when I am gone, but today we shall celebrate your wedding if the princess is still willing." Alina's smile was answer enough. The wedding preparations continued, but now with Ivan as the groom. The celebration that followed was unlike any the kingdom had seen, filled with music and dancing that lasted well into the night. The firebird sang from its golden cage, a melody of such beauty that even the oldest guests felt young again while it lasted. When the festivities finally quieted, Ivan sought out the gray wolf, who had remained at the edge of the gathering. "Will you stay with us now?" Ivan asked. "You would have a place of honor in the palace for as long as you wish." The wolf regarded him with those ancient, knowing eyes. "My path lies